right, we are going to be solving direct proportion equations using cross products. Before we talk about how to solve our proportions, I want to talk about the different types of relationships that our proportions have. The first is the vertical relationship, the relationship that the numerator has with the denominator. You know that your fractions are equal because in your proportions you can always simplify both of your fractions and you should get the same number. Or you can just do the division. Remember, the fraction bar means division, so this says 1 divided by 2, and this fraction says 2 divided by 4. Showing the division on each, I do get the same result. So that's my vertical relationship. My horizontal relationship is that I can multiply any fraction by an equivalent form of 1, meaning the same number in the numerator as the denominator, and I should get an equivalent fraction. Notice multiplying 1/2 by 2 over 2, my equivalent form of 1, I get 2/4. That's the horizontal relationship that proportions have. Now, the relationship that we're going to be talking about in this video, and the one you'll probably use the most, is the cross product relationship. The cross products are literally the products of numerator times denominator of the other fraction and denominator of the first fraction times numerator of the second fraction. So let's see how that works. Here I have my cross numbers, and I'm going to go ahead and multiply them. You might hear this as butterfly multiplying or heart multiplying. I've heard it as infinity multiplying. So looking at numerator of one fraction times the denominator of the other fraction, I'm going to get 1 times 4. I'm going to bring down my equal sign. You do set your cross products equal to each other. Now looking at my other denominator and numerator, I get the 2 times the 2. So I should get that 1 times 4 equals 2 times 2. And simplifying both sides, you'll see I do. So numerator of one fraction times the denominator of the other equals the denominator of one fraction times the numerator of the other. And that is a relationship that all proportions have. It's called the cross product relationship. Please take a second to pause the video to make sure you have the cross product property in your notes. Now notice that it says that B and D cannot equal 0. Let's look at why that is. If you come over to your proportion, you see that B and D are in the denominator. Remember, you can't divide by 0, so your denominator can't equal 0. So that's why it says that B cannot equal 0 and D cannot equal 0. So if you have A over B equals C over D, then AD will equal BC. Coming from here, the cross products, or the product of numerator times denominator and denominator times numerator. Here we have an equation that we are going to solve with cross products. This equation, we want to use cross products because if you notice, 9 is not a multiple of 12. So in order to figure out what we're multiplying to get to one fraction to the other, that would be a little bit more difficult. We'd have to use a fraction or a decimal. So here we're going to use cross products. So again, we're looking at the x times 9 and the 7 times 12. You might see this look something like this. I've heard teachers refer to it as heart multiplying, infinity multiplying, and butterfly multiplying. So again, we have the x times 9 on one side of our equal sign, x times 9. And then on the other side of the equal sign, we're going to have the 12 times the 7. You do set your cross products equal to each other to solve. On the left side of our equation, x times 9 is 9x. On the right side of the equation, 12 times 7 is 84. Now we just need to use the inverse operation to solve our equation. Remember, on the left side we have 9x, or 9 times x. We want to use our inverse to solve, so we're going to divide both sides by 9. We can leave our answer as a fraction, but we do need to make sure we are simplifying. Both 84 and 9 are divisible by 3. So I get 28 over 3. You might want to change this to a proper fraction. X equals 9 and 1/3. Or you could write that as a decimal, x equals 9.3, repeating. Here we have a new problem where we're going to have to set up our proportion. Our problem says the relationship between costs of light bulbs and the number of light bulbs purchased is directly proportional. If the cost is $20 for 8 light bulbs, how much will it cost for 15 light bulbs? So we need to set up our proportion. We know that the question is asking, how much will it cost for 15 light bulbs? So that's what we're going to be finding out. We can go ahead and define our variable to answer that question. Cost of 15 light bulbs. When you're setting up your proportion, I generally will still put my dependent value on top as my numerator, but what's really important is to make sure that your proportions are equivalent. So if you're going to put the cost as the numerator, it needs to be the numerator for both fractions, and then the number of light bulbs will be the denominator of both fractions. That's what's really important. So I know for 8 light bulbs, the cost is $20. So if I'm going to make a relationship of cost to light bulbs, both my fractions have to be cost to light bulbs. So I know this is $20 for 8 light bulbs. The question is, what will it be for 15 light bulbs? Now that my proportion's set up, I can go ahead and use my cross products to solve. So once again, numerator of one fraction times the denominator of the other will equal the denominator of one fraction times the numerator of the other. On the left side of the equation, I'm going to have 20 times 15, and on the right side, I'll have 8 times x. I went ahead and simplified both sides of my equation, and now I just need to solve. For this problem, I'm not going to leave my answer as a fraction, because when you're talking about costs, you usually talk about the change as a decimal. So over here, I'm going to go ahead and do 300 divided by 8. Now I could have simplified that fraction first if I wanted to, and that might have been easier. What's really important is that you remember the top dog goes in the dog house. This is 300 divided by 8, and this here says 300 divided by 8. Now that I've done my division, I get 37.5 equals x, and I can answer the question. The cost of 15 light bulbs is $37.50.